Hello, everyone. Right, I've just called this Way Black When, play on words. I call myself a community teacher, um, specialising in Black history, um, and founded a Black history program called Nubian Teachings. I'm also a founder of a charity called the Legacy of Windrush Descendants and Friends. My influences for Black history, I suppose, it starts with my mum, who was constantly telling me about what she knew, telling me about her, what she knew about her Black history, more about her beloved Jamaica. I had to do projects on it all the time. I then found out that my dad ran a cricket team, and I found out that he had was in the newspaper, and for some reason we couldn't get hold of the newspaper. And I found much later on that there's a place called the Archives in Bedford. So I went down there because they said I'd find it there, only to find loads of information on people. I thought Windrush was it. This is when we first came over. And I was astonished to find people there from 1700. So my passion for more came from there. I think my first led me to then be going to the archives all the time, and then meeting people such as Dr. Les Henry, Hakeem Addy, Dr. Les Walker, Susan Okokon, kind of led me to want to find out even more. We're now with Legacy of Windrush Descendants. We've now got we don't like to call it a Saturday school, so we call it the Learning Hub, where we are teaching young people, children from African backgrounds, Caribbean backgrounds, mixed heritage backgrounds, and Black history goes through the whole thing like a thread. So we do maths, English, science, but each time we try to bring it back to that whole thing to do with Black history. And what I'd like for the future is to have a library of some kind of resources library where people can find out even more. I find that you find out things every day. And I think we've got to, what Corinne was saying and Yvonne was saying about what's actually happening with our history is something that we do need to, we do need to actually challenge. We do need to say, well, what is going on. I remember when I went to Portugal, and I've always been told about the Moors' influence in what they call Black Moors or Moors' influence in Portugal. When I went, they were trying to say that, it's Roman. But if you look at the architecture and how everything's built, that's not Roman architecture. But it was almost as if it's more acceptable to look on a whiter side of history than it is for the truth to be told. And like Linford was saying, we have to read everything, we have to question, we have to look at everything before we just accept that that's what it is. So the four, I call it the unusual suspects: Alison Buchanan, Harold Moody, Queen Philippa, and Joe Clough is who I'm going to talk about today. They haven't got a theme. So I've got somebody from an artistic background, politician, royalty, and somebody who ran a business. But Way Black When, I'm always finding out each time, and I'm talking to Linford as well, we find out about more and more people as time goes on, which is wonderful, because we are not looking at the same old. Not that there's anything wrong with learning about the Martin Luther Kings, Malcolm X, etc., but to find that there's loads more, to find that there's people who have done things in every walk of life, especially when we have, how can I put this nicely, or maybe I won't. We're being taught the history that the oppressors want us to learn. So therefore, finding out that actually we are inventors, we are intelligent, we know, we've always known, we're very, very innovative people. Find it, and we can actually then record it, we can actually then teach our children, their children, and so on. So it actually uplifts us rather than brings us down is amazing. So to find out that 10,000 years ago, they found a skeleton in the Cheddar Gorge of a man who they nicknamed the Cheddar Man. They're even trying to now, I'm not quite sure what the machine is called, they do facial reconstruction. Now they're trying to say that they think he could have been dark, because obviously it opens a can of worms if this man turns out to be a dark skinned, a black person. So obviously, if he was there, the scientists also say that the people around had to be black. So when you have people saying, go back to your own country, just point out 10,000 years ago, I could be looking for him. So we do have to keep on finding out more, questioning, reading more. It's so important, and not just everything off the web, because even then we are still limiting ourselves to what we find. If you look for old books on Egypt, you'll find the original drawings or paintings that are found on walls. The people are much darker. And if you look at more modern books, all of a sudden that same wall, they are repainted. And my friend said she's actually witnessed them painting over characters with lighter coloured paint. Disturbing. So Alison Buchanan, she's from the town I'm from, which is in Bedford, and she was born on 2nd of September 1968 to Keith and Lena Harding. I've recently seen that, her dad was Barbados and her mum's Jamaican, and I did see that in Barbados they called her Bajan. She's both, celebrate both. Her father used to have an eclectic taste in music, and she found Strauss, some music by Strauss, and she played it, and she heard somebody, as she termed, just screaming. So in the music lesson, Alison's always loved singing. She decided to mimic that voice she heard. But a teacher even didn't see her as disrupting the class as she was hoping, but saw her vocal range. Cut a long story short, she was given a grant, etc., to go and train, which is where now she became one of the youngest divas to sing at Glyndebourne, Santa Barbara, you name it. She's been in Porgy and Bess, Carmen. She sang all over the world. She actually trained in Italy. She felt that by going to Italy, she would, because most operas are in Italian, she wanted to know the lingo. So when she did her singing and she pronounced all her words, it would be done fluently. But what she noticed when she was there, every time she went for a part, they would tell her, well, there's not really any parts for you apart from Carmen and Porgy Bess. And so there was a competition coming up and they would not enter her for it. So she took a job doing waiting, working in the shop, you name it, and raised the money herself, won the prize. Then all of a sudden it was, oh, look at our Alison, the same person who they didn't know what to pay for to get that prize. She didn't let it sort her because she just thought she knows what her dream is. She's loved singing all her life. She's come back to Bedford to sing. She's always said opera should be accessible to all. It's a beautiful form. It's a wonderful way of expressing yourself. And she wants everybody to know that, because I think sometimes we may pigeonhole ourselves to think we have got to like reggae, we have got to like soca, we have got to like soul. Music all round really is something that everybody should want to access. And she just wants to show how accessible it is. She's loved with people like Jessie Norman, etc. So she's now a director of the Pegasus Theatre Company. And she was actually put there because she, by another Black person, to say, you need to open this up. She's gone around the country and she has trained young people to appreciate opera, to appreciate the art form, and they have loved it. I used to run a youth club many years ago, and I asked her to come down. And at first, when they heard her singing, they said, why are we here? This ain't our music. And it was almost like they were going to do a mass walkout. And all of a sudden, Alison hit the top note. They froze where they were, ran over to her and they said, I want to do that. So she got them captured and they were singing. It was wonderful. And it opened the doors for some of them to appreciate and widen their horizons with what they could learn, not pigeonhole themselves, like I said before. With Pegasus, she wants to change the whole thing of opera. So she's actually now looking at doing an opera about the Windrush. And happy to say that she's including people from Bedford, and I'm hoping also people from Pursuit of Happiness as well to take part in it, because I think once it's done, she's looking for it to be done in about 2.5 years, and I think once that's done, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And it would also be good one day if you can even have her on here to talk about what she does, because she is an amazing force. She even over COVID, she was singing, she was holding concerts on her street just to keep people's spirits up. She's a wonderful person, and that's why I put not so way back yet when, because I'm actually older than her. So, and it's nice to talk about somebody that's living. Now, Harold Moody, he was born in Jamaica, in Kingston, and in 1882. And had dreams, he was a devout Christian, had dreams of becoming a doctor. And he actually came over to England in 1904 to study at King's College, but he was refused any work after that just because of his colour. He actually started up his own practice where he started to help people who were in poverty, because, you still had to pay for doctors in those days. There wasn't a National Health Service as such. And he married a white lady called Olive Mabel Tranter, and he had his study so that he can actually make a living and help, still put food on the table. They had 6 children to feed, so they had to. In March 1931, he formed the League of Coloured People, and he had to do that. I think, Linford had mentioned Jomo Kenyatta and Padmore and so on. He'd also met them. It was quite unfortunate that some of the people within that mix, like W.E.B. Du Bois, some of them didn't get on, Marcus Garvey, etc. Because I think if they had honed in their things together, they could have maybe done something a lot more sustainable, so that it would still carry on. And I think we still have that issue today, which is quite sad. But they also used to take mixed heritage young children on trips, because the parents the mother didn't want them. They had to do something to help them know how to comb their hair, etc. Just take them on trips to the seaside, etc. all together, so they could see other people like them and feel a little bit more accepted than going back to their home, where sometimes they were ostracized or just seen as the odd one out in their families. He's worked over the years with many people to try and fight for the rights for Black people, especially with the colour bar. The League of Coloured People was sometimes seen just as a social club, but soon after that he started to look at the politics behind it, and he fought very hard for people for sailors and soldiers who needed their citizenship back. Imagine, you come over to this country, and you fought for this country, and then you're still not accepted to come and live here. So they had to some of them to fight to get their citizenship back. He had a little bit of issues because some of the people he supported were South Asian, but yet still he was saying, I'm really only doing this for people of African descent because I'm a Pan-Africanist. And but he still met people like Gandhi, who has since been found that he was also quite racist. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts with maybe what his emotion is, and if he was alive today, what we'd actually think of what's actually happening now. He went back over to the Caribbean for a little while, and he took ill, and he wasn't in England for the Pan-African conference at the time, and also because he was ill. When he did come back over here, he was basically taken to bed and died in 1947. But his legacy still lives on, and he's a person that we need to again teach our young people and ourselves about what he did, because you imagine the barriers he had to face, but it didn't stop him. He continued. Now, Queen Philippa, she's held as the first Black queen, and I'm going to read something out to you, because when she was actually not, she married Edward III, but she actually wasn't the person that was supposed to marry him. It was supposed to be her sister Sabella, but unfortunately Sabella passed away when she was quite young. So Queen Philippa, who was 9 at the time, was then going to be betrothed to King Edward. And I'm going to read something of how they describe her, which is, it's quite shocking. So this Bishop of Stapleton came to inspect her. The way you'd inspect a horse. That's all I can liken it to. But it said, the lady whom we saw has not uncomely hair, betwixt her blue, black, and brown. Her head is clean shaped. Her forehead is high and broad, and standing somewhat forward. Her face narrows between her eyes, and the lower part of her face is still more narrow and slender than her forehead. Her eyes are blackish brown and deep. Her nose is fairly smooth and even, save that is somewhat broad at the tips and flattened, yet it is no snub nose. Her nostrils are also broad. Her mouth is fairly wide. Her lips are somewhat full, and especially the lower lip. All her limbs are well set and unmaimed, and naught amiss as far as any man can see. Moreover, her brown skin, she's brown skin all over, much like her father. He goes on to talk about her teeth and how she has a slight overbite, and some of them are white and not that white. I mean, I don't know. It was said that she didn't know that she was being inspected, but I don't know how he got to see her teeth unless he actually. It just sounds it's disgusting. They went on to have a lot of children, and she had a son, Edward, who they called the Black Prince. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever watched these things with the knights and everything else, and they always have the Black Prince, and the Black Prince is always in this black metal, and he's always seen as very bad. He wasn't. He was actually a very, very nice young man, and was always helping the poor. And I've got a bit here on here where you can see where this Bishop of Stapleton has actually described her. But yet still, you look at this description next to it, that's the painting of her. Strange, huh? This is her son, and again, very, very nice person. The king that when she became queen, the man who married her actually was very, very much in love with her and didn't care what anybody said. But it is just that she went through this. People are talking about Meghan Markle and so on. Queen Sophia was, after Queen Philippa. What on earth would they have had to go through? Because her description and Sophia's description is just as bad and just as awful. And the fact that the only time I've seen anything described like that is when I've seen somebody describing a horse. So we've got.
Oh, your internet's paused there, P. So I think the first description you gave, Joe Clough, was the first words that we just heard.
Oh, sorry. Oh, God, it's come up. My internet's unstable.
Yeah, but if you push through now, I think you're on red.
I'm going to push through.
Cool.
Right. Jamaica Joe was born in 1887, and he was orphaned at an early age. And he became the first black bus driver in London. But I'll tell you what I'm talking about now, because it's another person that I'm going to take as a Bedfordian. So as a boy, the Dr. White, and not the one that made lemonade, he was always the person that looked after his horses. He took Dr. White everywhere. So Dr. White said to him, would you like to come to England? Joe was 18 at the time, thought, hey, want to go see the world? Why not? So he was brought over, looked after Dr. White. Eventually, there were also automobiles, cars. So he learned to drive one and still took Dr. White everywhere. And he and Dr. White lived together with him being his servant, his driver and everything for quite some years until Dr. White died. Joe had saved up enough money to get a job at the local bus company. He then looked at, White, you know what, I would like to do something more. And he moved to Bedford, as anybody would do, because it's a wonderful town. And that's where he met his wife. And he's got his own coach, which you'll see in the picture here. And he decided to take that to Bedford, and he went on to have become a mechanic. He mended cars, he even mended my friend's dad's car. He had a string of taxis, and there are quite a lot of people here who remember him with fondness. He was even in the war, forgot to say about that. He even went in the war and drove the ambulances. And despite all the atrocities he saw, he carried on. Some said that he had PTSD with some of the things that he saw, but he still came back to England, back to his wife, and carried on his business. And he was the very, very first taxi company, bus company owned by somebody of colour, which shouldn't be an unusual thing. I'm glad that we say it's the first person, not because we all of a sudden grew with intelligence. It was just that we were the first to beat down barriers. That's how I like to see the firsts. Joe lived on till 1976, and he's going to have a plaque. The legacy of Windrush descendants and friends are going to be working with the council to look at getting some plaques around Bedford of people that have Black people that have lived there, so we'll be part of his history. I am happy to say that our museum is just a little bit more welcoming of our history, but even saying that, still try to dictate what we want to follow. We've got a Black History Trail that's in the museum. We're getting there, and it's only going to take us working together even more to ensure that it's not just one or two places that have access to Black history. It's all over, and hopefully in our own establishments, but it's not saying that it should not be in the wider community. So there's my 4 characters, and I've got the Sankofa symbol up here. That should be go back and get it, but I've said go Black and get it, because that's what we should do. Thank you for listening.